Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will get started here in just 1 minute, but before we do, I invite you to just kind of get comfortable wherever you are and start to pay attention to your breath a little bit. That's something that we'll be exploring a lot more today because it's such a great tool to bring in more nourishment and space, and Trione, who's joined us today, is just such a great resource for that. So just take a minute or two to do that. All right, I think we'll, just to honor everyone's time, we'll get started. So Trione Barnett is joining us today, and I first got to know Tree through the anxiety clinics that we've been teaching for both of us for a long time now. And really those are designed to help, you know, therapists and different people work with their own clients, helping them, give them tools for anxiety and trauma and PTSD and anything along that spectrum. I think what we all know is that anxiety and stress on all levels is rampant today. I was kind of sharing with Tree right before this. I don't think I've met one person that hasn't had different levels of stress over the last few years. And so I think the more all of us, you know, even if we are like, I'm usually pretty good, but the stressful moments come up. So I think tools and practices can be so helpful to, and they can be quick things. They don't have to be, you know, a long yoga practice, but just quick things to help bring the body into the balance. I know for me can be really, really powerful. So what Tree will be sharing today, I think, is such a perfect follow-up to what we did last week. Last week was really more the full yoga practice. And today, really, it's going to be some simple exercises that we can do in a chair and we can do in everyday life. So if we have even 2 minutes at our office desk, or you know, 2 minutes just kind of wherever we are at the dinner table or sitting in a chair in a waiting room, these are things that we can practice just to help regulate and bring things into balance. So she'll give, I know, a great introduction about anxiety and kind of how, you know, what dysregulation and regulation are. And please, as we go along, just, you know, ask questions in the chat and I'll go ahead and bring those up as things go. And similar to last week, like I just said, any questions, you can enter those in the chat, and then we'll leave a few minutes at the end just for discussion. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy. I'm going to pop off my video and let Tree take over.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for that introduction. I have to kind of laugh because as I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, wow, this means I get to talk to myself for almost a whole hour. I'm one of those folks that loves to chat and loves to talk, and so this is a treat for me. It is a little strange to not see faces, but I'm going to keep talking and count on Carrie to fill me in with questions. As she mentioned, I'm Trione Barnett. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I'm a yoga therapist. I teach trauma-informed yoga, and I also train teachers to work with individuals in their yoga class to be trauma-informed. And so I was so excited when I got the link to attend this presentation today because it said Nourish November, and that made me so happy. I'm one of those folks that gets happy with little things, but immediately my mind went to, hey, maybe we could create an entire calendar. Let's see, Jolly January, Forgiving February, Mindful March, Appreciative April. You see where my mind goes, right? But there's a theme here, and it's kind of an introduction to what we're going to talk about, and that is a theme. Nourish November gives us an opportunity to become aware. What do we want to nourish? What do we need to nourish? Do we even know? And that comes from creating an awareness, a skill awareness. And that's a skill that some of us don't necessarily have. But I'm hoping that after we have our conversation today, you'll feel like, yes, I've learned new skills. One of them being, how can I become more aware? Because whatever it is that I'm aware of gives me information so that I can grow and improve on my life. So let's start with a check-in, just a short check-in for, I'm going to say 4 minutes, a very short check-in just to get a sense for what are you starting with in this very moment, physically, energetically, and emotionally. And all you really need to do is get super comfortable in your chair. Maybe let your arms rest and your shoulders become heavy. And just take a moment. Give yourself permission to not have anywhere to go or anything to do, but just pause. If it feels comfortable, you can allow your eyes to softly close. Every time we look around through our eyes, we collect information in our brain, which keeps our mind active. And so when you have the ability to close your eyes or soften your gaze, it helps us tune in just a little bit more. So just pause for a moment and scan through your physical body. Maybe starting at the top of your head as you slowly start to go down through your head and face and neck and shoulders. Just scanning down at a pace that feels comfortable for you and observing with curiosity. What am I looking for? Just noticing. Maybe you notice there's tension that maybe you hadn't noticed before. Maybe you notice, actually no tension today. There's no right or wrong, just an opportunity to tune in, and notice how your physical body feels. Is there any clenching, any squeezing? Are you sitting comfortably in your chair? Just notice for a moment. What are you starting with today physically? And then now allowing your attention to turn to the rise and fall of your breath. And notice the fact that you're breathing. Not trying to change your breath, but simply becoming aware of the fact of the mechanics of breathing. When you breathe in, typically your ribs expand. When you breathe out, your body relaxes. Breathing in is energizing, breathing out is relaxing. So just notice this natural rise and fall of your breath. Maybe you notice where you feel your body moving. Is it in your upper chest, center of your body, or down in your abdominal area? There's no right or wrong area, but notice where you feel your body moving. You also might notice, is your breath fast or slow? Smooth, choppy, deep or shallow? And again, none of it is right or wrong. It's just the state that it's in this moment, your breath. And now if you would allow your attention to travel to your mind and just ask yourself, is my mind active today? Lots of thoughts? Or is it not very active at all? You're able to check in with your physical body and your breath without much distraction. Just notice, letting your mind be free, not trying to control it. And then when you're ready, just bring yourself back into, maybe tap your toes on the floor, maybe stretch your body and move in any way that feels okay. Bringing awareness back to your physical body. Sit up tall if your eyes are closed and open your eyes. So what did anybody notice? Is there anyone out there that cares to share what you noticed by checking in? Taking just a few minutes to actually check in with your physical body, your energy, and
I
your
think there
mind.
was one note, a lot of energy in the chest and maybe not as much fullness there, but just a little more, a little shallower, curious. And then another was just sort of noticing a tightness in the jaw. So
Yeah.
curious if you have any comments on those two pieces.
Yeah, so knowledge is power. Once you notice that you're holding tension in a certain part of your body, then you have opportunity or options to make a change. Sometimes I notice if I'm holding tension in my jaw feels tight. I notice through a body scan that, oh my gosh, I've got some tension here. There are options. I can yawn, nice and big, and see what it feels like to let my jaw soften. I could bring attention and awareness specifically right to the area of my jaw and ask myself, what would it feel like to soften?
Yeah.
Sometimes we hold tension for a reason. You know, sometimes we hold tight because we've got an injury or something that's happened to our physical body. But most of the time we hold tension without even noticing that we're holding tension.
Yeah.
Which would be the main reason why we check in. Because when you discover that you're holding tension and you ask yourself, do I need to hold this tension? If the answer is no, then at your own pace, you can just slowly let it go and see how that feels.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It is, no matter how many times you check in, there's always like something maybe new you didn't notice as you're going around your day. So just maybe not trying to change it. That was one thing I was taught, just sort of being with it and not. I think another something else someone noticed was just a racing mind that was sort of overwhelming the ability to check in.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's another good point. Sometimes when we check in, and the reason I wanted to do this right away in the beginning is to get a sense for how are you feeling right now? Because we've had our check-in, we're going to have a little conversation, we're going to have some movement, we're going to practice some self-regulation techniques, and then we're going to check in again. And for that person, the question would be, is my mind in the same state or has it changed? And the value in that is when we can realize our efforts make change, it makes it easier to practice the efforts.
Yeah,
If we
I think
just
that's
go
great.
through our day and we don't really notice what are we starting with and what are we ending with, where's the motivation?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Even something someone could spend, a minute or two journaling about.
Yes, Carrie, and one of the things, the most important thing that I just heard you say too is sometimes you don't have to do anything. Just the act of being curious can cause our mind and our body to become calm because it gives our mind something to focus on. Curiosity. Oh, I noticed there's discomfort here. And you explore that area with curiosity and not trying to change it, and noticing if there's judgment associated with this curiosity. Because if there is, you then have an opportunity to say, okay, I realize I'm being judgmental. What would it feel like just to observe 10,000 feet and notice what you notice? Creates a sense of calm. But instead of talking about it creating calm, I want to continue and we'll see if you have the same experience in what I'm suggesting now, that you may experience calm by just observing and becoming curious. Let's see, what's the next thing? It's true, Carrie. We are living in times of uncertainty and ups and downs. And I pretty much don't know anyone that hasn't had a level of stress or anxiety way beyond what they've ever experienced. Myself included. I teach individuals how to self-regulate and manage anxiety, but it doesn't make me immune. We still have the same things in life and we have to practice ourselves. One of the things that I really hope that you walk away with today from this conversation is it doesn't have to be an hour-long yoga class or an hour-long run or bike ride or anything that is a expanded period of time. The key in managing moments, the key in managing stress and anxiety is identifying immediately when you need to do something different. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but the sooner you can identify that, I'm feeling a little stressed, the sooner you can apply a technique to counteract those feelings and emotions. And so we call that managing moments, right? So we're not going to manage the whole day. We're going to literally manage moments. And everyone has their own way of dealing with stress and anxiety. You've got the individual that runs through life, you know, piling on as much responsibility and tasks and things to make life busy so they don't have to focus on stress and anxiety. Some of those folks are out there. There are some people that want to curl up in a ball and maybe not get out, not enjoy community or fellowship with friends and other people. There's different ways that we respond to stress and anxiety. Sometimes we get activated, heart races, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. The opposite side of that is, man, I don't feel like getting up today. You know, that too is anxiety and stress. And so there's two extremes, and then there's that whole level in between. But the good news is there's self-regulation for all of those. Self-regulation techniques to upregulate, self-regulation techniques that bring us back down to a state of calm. We're going to actually practice some of those techniques today as well, upregulation and downregulation.
And just a quick note as we jump into these,
Yep.
I think a really powerful part of these practices is they have been tested and researched. And, you know, there's, you know, I think, you know, Genevieve, who we both work with, there's just a lot of science that goes behind all of the different things that Tree is going to be sharing. So it's not just sort of this, oh, I practiced this and it worked. It's, no, this has worked for thousands of people. And so it is known, and there's very specific reasons why each of these practices work. So Tree will talk about that. So I just wanted to make sure to add that in, because I think it's really important to know that there's very real, you know, research behind what she's going to be sharing.
Excellent point, Carrie. I actually taught a pilot study with a group of 8 individuals that we did a pre-assessment, questions on stress and anxiety. We also took heart rate. We did heart rate variability studies. We went through an 8-week program practicing these self-regulation techniques. And then at the end, we did a post-assessment. And I'm kind of making a long story short, but at the end, 7 of 8 individuals had remarkable shifts in heart rate variability, in their responses, self-regulated, or their self-reported responses to stress. And it really, really did make a difference. I've got stories I could tell you for days on the changes that these techniques have made in individuals' lives. So it is very encouraging. Let's see. One of my favorite quotes of all time lately is this: you can only change what you're aware of. We're coming back to that sense of the importance of awareness. And so I've mentioned that because before we start practicing self-regulation techniques, I want to point out that we have the importance of awareness physically, what's happening, energetically with our breath, and our mind and emotions, because all of these things are affected by stress. Our physical body is affected by stress, our mind and emotions certainly, and our breathing and our levels of energy. So we can only change what we become aware of. And so that's really what we're doing today, is we're starting to practice and build on our technique of creating awareness around our body, our breath, and our mind. This is a skill that you can learn, and the more you practice, the better it gets. And so the good news is, well, I like to put it this way. I don't know how many of you have ever practiced yoga, but I venture to say that the first time if you went into a yoga class, things were somewhat challenging. You didn't know what you were getting into, what to do, how this was going to turn out. The second time you went, you were a little more familiar and maybe you walked a little taller. The third time, you're a master. We start calling ourselves, I'm a yogi. So my point is, practice in small amounts, make significant changes, and increase our confidence. So I have confidence that you guys can learn these techniques with me today. and use them for yourself. Let me check my notes again, because I'm one of those people, I told you, I can look into this camera and talk all day long. But I probably better make sure that I stay on track. Let's see. Yes. I mentioned that in yoga, I'm going to back up here for a second. I want to get this thought straight because it's such an important one for me. It's such an important one. The rules for practice. As we begin to try these techniques, what's really important is this. Number one, give yourself permission to be curious about how it feels. We're not looking for a right or wrong and am I doing this right? It's more about how does it feel for you? How does the technique feel for you? If the technique does not feel comfortable for any reason at all, give yourself permission to say, you know, I don't think I like that one. It doesn't feel good. You may want to try it again at another time and you may have a different result. But for now, it's a really great idea just to give yourself permission to be curious and honor whatever comes up for you. You know, it's absolutely okay. I also like to say this, as we practice, sometimes I might language something like, you know, move in a way that's slow. Well, some people don't feel like moving slow. If someone mentioned earlier their mind was active and it wasn't settling, that person may want to move a little faster. You have to meet yourself where you are, right? Just because I'm instructing and I'm leading today, if I ask you to do something slow, if it doesn't feel comfortable, feel free to move faster. Honor yourself, observe whatever you're doing with curiosity. And if it's okay with you, close your eyes so you can sense from the inside. And this is actually a great way to teach this because I don't see all of your faces and you're not seeing each other's faces. So whether or not your eyes are closed or not, hopefully we'll feel okay because it really does make a difference as we practice. So let's pause for a second and sit up in your chair. I also want to try to avoid 20 minutes of just talking. So let's try a self-regulation technique that is managing our breath through movement. So I'll give you the instruction. If you're sitting tall, rest your hands on your knees. And on an inhalation, just slowly start to draw your shoulders up towards your ears. And on an exhalation through your nose, slowly let your shoulders start to drop back down. So it's an inhalation, up, and an exhalation, down. So continue to move your shoulders up and down. Hopefully your eyes are closed. If not, soften your gaze and try not to look around. So the inhalation and the exhalation are the same length. Inhaling up, exhaling down. And if your mind begins to wander during this exercise, just gently bring it back to your breath. Inhaling up, exhaling down. And let's try about 3 more of these. Inhaling up, exhaling down.
As we're doing this, Tree, just a quick question. Should there be force at all as we're moving up and down, or how do we know when to stop when we're pulling up?
So it's a lift, as if you're not squeezing your muscles, but just using enough muscle effort to lift your shoulders up, avoid squeezing, and exhale slowly laying back down. It's as if you're moving your shoulders in a manner to create a massage for your neck.
Great.
Nice and easy. That's an excellent question because if you're squeezing your muscles, it will feel different than if you're just lifting. So with that new instruction, let's just add 3 more rounds. Inhaling up softly as if you've got a butterfly in your shoulders and you want the butterfly to stay. Inhaling, exhaling. Last one. and then pause. So that's just one movement, linking movement with breath. And I'm curious if anyone noticed anything that they care to share.
I personally noticed I've had a little bit of a racing mind today too, and so doing that almost just started to feel like waves, just sort of up and down. So it was it gave the mind a little bit of something to focus on while also breathing. So it just felt very soothing.
Yes, nice. Anyone else? Did anyone else notice jittering or shaking? I noticed myself when I went up, I had some, it was almost like I was catching my muscles.
Yeah, I think someone had noticed that on the way down there was some catching. It was sort of like layers of letting down.
Yes. And what do you suppose happens if you continue to practice with those layers of catching? If you continue to practice, we smooth those out if that feels right. But it's not necessarily a goal, but as we repeat, our body becomes accustomed to what we're doing and it tends to move and flow a little easier. Did anyone just, I always have to ask this question, did anyone just dislike that kind of movement? Maybe it felt uncomfortable?
I don't have anyone that did so far. I think what I was just noticing when you were talking is this is such a great thing to do anytime, right?
Yeah.
It's like I can be sitting at my computer working and just sort of start moving my shoulders and breathing a little bit, or take 30 seconds away from the screen to close my eyes and do that, which I think is such a great, I'm kind of thinking about notes I'm going to write down to make sure I have at my desk for those reminders.
Sure, and that brings me to the next point. Let's try a little more movement, a little more active movement. So maybe move forward in your chair so that your feet are firmly on the floor. And if it's comfortable for you, go ahead and close your eyes again. We'll start with something familiar. On an inhalation, bring your shoulders up. Exhale, bring your shoulders down. Inhale, lift your chin up. Exhale, chin back to neutral. Let's move back to shoulders. Inhale, shoulders up. Shoulders down. Chin up. Chin down. Two more, shoulders up and down. Chin up. Chin down. Last one. And just pause for a moment and notice what you notice. So the second time we moved our shoulders, hopefully it was a little smoother or easier for you. You knew where you were going. We added a lift of the chin. So what we're doing is we're linking our breath with movement. Our mind is focused on our breath, giving our mind a break. And our body is moving in accordance to our breath, giving our body a break. Sometimes we hold a lot of tension in our neck and shoulders. And especially when we talk about stress and anxiety, this is an area that one of the first big knocks that we receive when we start to experience stress. Oh, my neck hurts or my shoulders hurt. And so practicing that when you're sitting at a desk can be very helpful. It doesn't take long to create change. Hopefully some of you guys notice a difference in the beginning of that movement and the end, or gathered information that I may need to give myself some attention here.
Yeah, there was one observation just when you added the neck piece in, that there was this, not necessarily a pain, but just a noticing of, oh yeah, the back of my neck is a little tight.
Yes, yes. And so that information gives us opportunity. Move from there depending on how much effort you want to put in. Let's pause from movement and come back to conversation again about stress and anxiety. I mentioned dysregulation. So dysregulation affects us physically, physiologically, where there's a chemical reaction when we have a physiological response to stress or anxiety. It affects us emotionally and behaviorally. So if we were to just chat for a second, Carrie, what do you notice if you start to feel anxious or stressed in your body?
Yeah, I think the biggest ones, I definitely tend to hunch a little bit. And
Mm,
I start to feel, yes, it's like I'll just sort of start cranking on something. I think for me, the biggest sign is always my breathing. I get
mm,
really shallow in my chest, kind of without a doubt. That's always what happens. And I have a hard time getting down into my belly in those
mm.
places. I know I should be doing it, but I just have a hard time getting into my belly.
Yeah. Anyone else notice your heart race? Boom, 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 boom. Heart palpitations, or your palms may start to sweat. Your pupils may get big. Your mouth may get dry.
Yeah, I
You
think
may,
someone else was just saying they feel their whole body just constrict a little bit.
yes, just clench, that
Hmm.
clenching. And we tend to go through the day sometimes clenching little bits at a time and collecting this tension without even noticing it. So that brings us back to our awareness. Why do we check in with our physical body? To become aware of some of these signs. Because if we start to notice that we're clenching, we're squeezing, we're hunching. Oh, I'm hunching. Okay, I can sit up tall. That's a counteraction to the action, or a counteraction to what is happening to us, right? So if I'm slumped forward, I can mindfully roll my shoulders back and turn my head as soon as I become aware of the fact that I'm slouching or hunching forward. If I notice that I'm squeezing or I'm holding tension, kind of like when we talked about the jaw, just ask yourself the question. You don't even have to do anything, but the question, what would it feel like if I allowed my shoulders to become heavy? What would it feel like if I allowed my legs to sink deeper into the chair beneath me? So I'm not asking to do anything. I'm not actively trying to, but just asking the question and then becoming curious about your own response can be very helpful.
Someone had a
So,
question for you. Are there
sure.
any, when you're working with individuals, or are there any tips or frequencies you recommend for people to just notice,
Mm.
what's going on and to check in? I know there's apps and there's various things you can use, but is there anything that you found? Because you don't want to be, it's how do you move in a gentle way? So it's not always like, oh, I need to be doing this, but it becomes just sort of an organic process.
Yeah, to be honest with you, for individuals that are not very aware of their physical body, once in the morning and once in the evening is a really good thing, because in between we forget.
Mhm.
Anything more than that, we're just adding pressure. Oh, I need to do it in an hour. Every hour I need to check. Well, to be honest with you, if you check in the morning, what am I starting with? Get a baseline, and then go to bed at night. How am I feeling in this moment? And then the in between is what changed, right?
Mhm.
And so just checking in the morning and the evening is probably a good idea to start. And then from there, as it becomes more common or consistent for you, maybe that you try to what we call habit stacking. Maybe when I brush my teeth, I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm going to notice what I notice. Maybe when I sit down for my cup of coffee, I'm going to be mindful for 1 cup of coffee. Maybe I'm going to be mindful later on, and just stack it on something that you already do that feels right for you. But it doesn't really have to be overdone, because what
Mhm.
happens is once you start collecting information in the morning and the evening, if you notice results and you get that aha moment, yeah, I did this, then you'll want to do it more often, and it's not a pressure on yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I think that's a great explanation. I had a funny one that's always stuck with me from when I was in Ayurveda school. They would always just say bathroom. When you go to the bathroom, Dr. Lad would say, take a big breath when you go to the bathroom. And that's like one of those things that stuck with me, but I think it's a great point to just,
Yes.
you know, but again, I think morning and night really is an awesome way to start.
Yeah. But we don't want to put too much pressure on ourselves, because then we just won't do it at all.
Hmm.
But it is such an important practice, though, of becoming curious and checking in. Because as you get this information, and speaking of checking in, let's check in with a self-regulation technique. Let's see, what do we want to do? I mentioned earlier that Sometimes stress and anxiety affects us in a way where we're like, ah, and you have this big reaction. And we're upregulated. Everything's pounding. You want to run. You think energy, blood flow. When we experience that, we want to be able to calm ourselves down. So we want to down regulate. So let's practice a couple down regulation techniques. One thing that works for sure and is called the fastest way to down regulate is to place your head below your heart. Now there's a couple ways that you can do that, and I'd like to, for the sake of this first demonstration, is just kind of push back into your chair and bring your elbows to your knees and let your head hang just a little bit. So you don't have to fold over completely, but basically you're practicing a seated forward fold. And so if you could try that right now for me, allow your elbows to make contact with your knees. And notice once again the fact that you're breathing. See what it would feel like to allow your head to become heavy and sink down a little bit more. We don't have to go as far as we can on the first breath, but rather breathe your way in. So I would invite you to notice on each exhalation, is there any way to soften just a little more? Each exhalation, and you literally can ask yourself, can I soften on the exhalation? It's a process of undoing through breath and curiosity. Can I soften? When you get to that place where you feel, I could literally hang here and breathe 100 breaths. Notice what it feels like to allow yourself to just be here and breathe 100 breaths. And then for the sake of time, slowly walk yourself back up. Maybe walk your hands back up onto your knees until you're in a seated position again, and allow your eyes to open. And what did anybody notice about that? Having your head at or below your heart.
I think there was a surprise by someone at how calming it was. It just sort of, something happened that helped flip things a little bit.
Yes. And so scientifically, it has something to do with your vagus nerve and letting yourself get your baroreceptors below your heart and allow one breath at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But the key to this practice, it can be done in child's pose if you practice yoga. Child's pose is another one that's a forward fold, a seated forward fold, or a standing forward fold, allowing your heart to go below your head. But the trick here is you have to be able to systematically allow your body to release tension. Sometimes when we practice a forward fold, how many of you have really tight hamstrings? I don't even do yoga because my hamstrings are so tight. I hear it all the time. Tight hamstrings are going to inhibit the ability for you to get calm and relaxed because all of your focus is going to be there. And so this is why I mentioned we breathe our way in, one breath at a time. Each exhalation, what would it feel like to soften, undo a little bit at a time to get to where you can just hang out? Because it's not an automatic thing. And if child's pose works for you, give that a go on the floor, seated in a chair, even on a desk. You're at work and you can push away. Let your forehead rest onto your hands and practice a few breaths, a minute or two, and that's it. Or a full standing forward fold if you want to go for the gusto. It's really lovely. But it gives you that ability to down regulate, and it's one of the fastest ways to down regulate. Any questions about that technique?
No, I think that's great. I just think about kids, right? That are so stressed, so anxious right now. And I feel like that's something that everybody should be doing in the classroom a few times a day.
Yes, for sure. Here's another one though, because sometimes if you're up here, depending on what's happened, depending on the level of chemicals and reaction in your physical body, just forward folding and allowing your mind to calm might not be available to you. Our mind could be racing too much, right? And so how do I down regulate when my mind is really racing? I've got a lot going on because I'm not just going to sit here and own. So we call that meeting the body where it is, meeting the student where they are, meeting yourself where you are. You're energized, so you have to meet your energy with energy. So a technique that we might practice here is I'm going to push back from my chair and stand. And so let's see, I'm going to adjust my little camera here. So I'm standing and I want to down regulate because I'm up here. So it might start with this. A light bouncing. Let your arms get heavy. Can you allow your arms to get even heavier? If it's comfortable, and some of you may feel like coming all the way off the floor, I don't. I'm a little older. I like to keep my knees and just kind of bounce. But you can jump and shake it up and shake it down and shake it up and shake it down. One more. Up. And pause. Just pause for a moment. If it's comfortable, close your eyes and notice. What do you notice? And then you might move side to side. So if you haven't moved side to side in a while, go easy. It doesn't have to be a huge bend. Just gently moving side to side. And then pause. Now we'll swing. Remember when you were a kid? Arms swing. Make sure that there's not anything in your way. Allowing your arms to swing and hit your body. Effortless, free, gentle swings. I'm pivoting my feet onto the floor so I'm not twerking my knees. And just allow yourself to swing. Can you feel the air on your hands when you swing? And then pause. And just let yourself sit down again. Close your eyes for just a moment and check in. Maybe notice your posture and how you're holding yourself. Is your posture comfortable? Or could it be more comfortable with a slight adjustment? Are you squeezing, clenching, or gripping anywhere that you notice in this moment? Let your attention travel to the rise and fall of your breath. Notice the fact that you're breathing, not trying to change anything. Where do you feel your body moving as a result of your breath? Is your breath in your upper chest, the center of your body, or your abdominal area? Is your breath fast or slow? Deep or shallow? And how about your mind? Is it actively wandering, having lots of thoughts? Or has it slowed slightly? Or somewhere in between? And when you're ready, let your eyes open. And I would ask you, how did that feel to meet your energy where you are? Through jumping, swinging, stretching?
I think there was a thought just so simple, so simple but helpful. So I know for me, it's, adding to that, this isn't profound stuff, right? But yet it helps. So that is kind of the mind-blowing thing. You do these things when you're a little kid and you don't
Yeah.
really realize the impact that they're having, and then you do them again now when you moments when you're having a lot of fullness or anxiety, and they make it a little better.
Absolutely, and a little bit goes a long way. A really interesting thought is that, chronic tension and anxiety, when it latches on in your body and your muscles get tight, really the only thing that's going to make that muscle feel better is movement. And so you want to be curious about your movement, mindful about your movement, move in a way that feels comfortable, but you're literally making change and releasing tension one breath at a time. And it really is that simple. But we don't think about it because we're so busy running ahead or looking behind. And so when you take time to cultivate awareness, when you take time to build that skill, you meet that moment when it happens, and then you lessen the chances of severity of stress and anxiety. And I think you mentioned it earlier with kids. I wish they'd just teach kids in school. Oh, I'm at a place where I need to move, or I need to be still, or I need to breathe or lower my head, right? It would go a long, long, long way.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other questions before I move on to the next one?
I don't think so.
Okay. So another down regulation technique through the breath. Some of you have probably been hearing over the last few years the breath is such an important tool that we have for creating a sense of calm. Unfortunately, some people have started judging their breath because they think, oh, my breath is up here, it's shallow, it's in my chest, I know it's bad, I have bad breath. Not that. So I want to talk just for a second about your breath. Breath has a purpose. When it's in your upper chest, there's a purpose. When it's in your center of your body, there's a purpose. When it's in your abdominal area, there's a purpose and effect. Tends to be when we're up here that we're super focused or high alert. Maybe sometimes hypervigilant, but there are definitely times when we need to be on alert and we need to be focused. So breath here is not a bad thing. Breath in the center of your body, full and rich through your ribs, is a sense of balance and equanimity. Not too much, not too little, just equal. Breath down in your abdominal area is your parasympathetic nervous system working, where you're super relaxed. And so a lot of times we think, oh, I want to get my breath from here, my chest, down into my belly. And sometimes the best way to do that is to simply observe your breath and try not to change or do anything, but just notice. Because as we notice the rise and fall of our breath, we get out of our own way. Perhaps we take our mind from thinking about the 10 things on our to-do list or the terrible thing that just happened, and we bring it in the present moment. Our mind's in the present moment. It's focused on the rise and fall of your breath and nothing else, with curiosity, and it's okay. And suddenly something shifts. We're not thinking, we're not worrying, we're in the present moment. And our body knows what to do. This is an automatic process. So when we allow ourselves or give ourselves permission to just get out of the way, we can create change that way too. There are also techniques for actively changing your breath. That you can manipulate your breath to create change. Scientifically, when we inhale, it energizes us. When we exhale, it creates calm. Energy, calm, energy, calm. If you notice throughout the day your breath's at different states, it's because we're at different states. But let's say that we want to create a sense of calm. One technique for that is this. Bring your palm up like this and turn your palm to face your lips and place your hand about, oh, I don't know, maybe a foot away from your mouth. I'll move forward, managing the visual here. So I'm just going to hold my elbow with my other hand and relax my shoulders. If you can, close your eyes for a moment and just listen to the sounds of the instructions before even moving. So what we'll practice in this technique is to inhale through your nose comfortably. And on an exhalation, blow out through your lips onto the palm of your hand. So we'll start with that very simple instruction. Inhale through your nose, calmly. Exhale, blow onto the palm of your hand. So continue to practice inhaling through your nose, gently blowing on the palm of your hand while I provide additional instruction. If you notice that your shoulders are tight, can you explore softening your shoulders as you continue to inhale through your nose and lightly blow on the palm of your hand? Do you notice, or can you notice, the temperature of air on the palm of your hand as you blow? Is it warm or cool? Can you imagine that as you blow the breath onto the palm of your hand, that it's a mirror and it's fogging? So use a sense of imagination. The mirror that you're holding is fogging through your breath. And if your mind begins to wander, bring it back through an inhalation through your nose and a light, gentle blow on your palm. Practice a couple more rounds. And then when you're ready, release your hand and just sit for a moment and notice what you notice. Try to avoid jumping up and running to the bank. You have a few minutes just to check in. What do you notice about this technique for you? I'd be curious, and it's absolutely okay if you say, you know, that wasn't for me, or wow, that just calmed me fast. So what do you notice?
I think one person noticed there was a little more energy in their head doing it this way. I don't know if there's any reason why that would be. And another person noticed maybe that their mind started to get a little more active again, maybe because we're coming to the end of our hour. I don't know what it is, but things just sort of coming back a little bit.
Yeah. Yes, and neither one of those is good or bad. If the individual who had the active mind, you could also add more visualization as far as seeing the fog on the mirror, seeing a flower opening, seeing color, try to drill down, adding even more detail for a visualization to give your mind something else to think about. But the other thing is sometimes that's just a really good indicator that I maybe need to move a little bit more before I get still. We can't just jump into stillness sometimes, and that's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some people say, oh, my mind just won't calm and so I can't do this. No, that's okay. It just means that we need to find a different route, right? Mm-hmm. So meeting with more energy, this is a very calm, still practice. And so that may not be the technique for the time if mind is that active.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Sort of maybe moving for a little bit, doing the jumping, a little more of that, a little more movement, and then kind of moving into this at the end. Yeah, great.
Another really great technique to try if you notice that I'm sitting and I'm trying to practice a breathing technique and my mind will not become still enough. Instead, practice a balancing technique. Maybe stand on one foot. Oops, I keep hitting my watch. Stand on one foot and take your arms out like you've got your balancing pole. Stand on one foot and see if you can allow your body to become as relaxed as possible while standing on one foot. So what this requires is a lot of focus, attention, and energy on keeping yourself standing up and not falling over, balancing, and I mentioned with the greatest amount of calm. Let the tension go while you practice. It gives your mind many things to practice. It's one of my favorite things that I do when I'm in the grocery store. If something happens and I feel like, whoosh, I just remembered I forgot to do something, I start to feel anxious, literally shift over to one side, lift a foot, and start finding a way where I can balance. And then it even becomes kind of a fun game to see, can I balance without letting everybody know that I'm balancing? A little internal challenge for myself to help create a sense of calm.
Those are such great techniques. I know we're kind of coming up. We have about 5 minutes left.
Oh, I can't believe it.
The great thing about all of these is that they're so easy, and they're things that we can easily forget. We've probably seen before, but when you practice them, you know, okay, what is working for me? What doesn't work? Are there any final tips that you'd like to share?
Can you repeat that? My dog just woke up.
All good. Are there any final tips that you think are particularly helpful, or any last pieces with in our last few minutes?
Yes, I think the best thing to do is to find that thing that works for you. If let's say that you go to a class or a teacher and you're trying to learn some techniques and it's not actually working for you, let that be okay, because there's a teacher for everyone, and sometimes there's a reason that didn't work out, and it's okay. Just try another teacher, try another something, and honor your response. You know, those folks that go into a class and they hate it and they tell me, I hated that class, I hated that yoga, and I will say, well, you know, you want to try it again with a different teacher, or do you want to try something else? And if they do, great. If not, let them come around again, and then when you're ready, find the teacher and the techniques that work, because sometimes we get so hard on each other. And I think the biggest mistake, I want to leave with this, the biggest mistake is giving up on yourself without really exhausting the avenues that are really there. There's all different types of yoga and techniques, and it's just a matter about being curious and finding the one that works for you.
I think that's huge. And we're going to be sharing, there's some other great resources and handouts that Tree has that we'll be sending along to you. So, you know, play and have fun, you know, spend 2 minutes, 5 minutes a day, just something little, and notice, does that help? Does that not help? And the things that you aren't noticing a difference from, just sort of throw to the side. Our goal really is to just provide you with, even if 1 or 2 nuggets, 1 or 2 pieces work and help create shifts, that's a win. Because the little, I think Tree did such a great job of saying it's all those little things that we do in our day. And I think especially right now, there's nothing massive in one moment that's coming at us. It's the little bits of news or the little bits of things happening that just slowly are impacting us before I think many of us are even realizing. And then all of a sudden there's a lot of emotion, or there's, you know, we're like, what happened? How did I get here? So I think it is really just the small things. So Tree, thank you so much. Your energy, your presence, your tools are always so helpful. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll have our final series next week, where I'll be sharing more on Ayurveda for the season and different things that we can incorporate as we go into the holidays. And just thank you again. And we hope this was helpful, and there's some pieces that you can take away.
Namaste.
Wonderful. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.